I'm here with Eve Parker. We got introduced by Naomi Teeter. And first off, Eve, just want to say thanks for taking the time. Would you mind just starting off, kind of telling a little about yourself, where you're from?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jason. What a cool opportunity. Yes, I am Eve Parker. I'm also known as Inspirational Eve. I am currently residing in Denver, Colorado, originally from San Diego. I am what they call here in Colorado a transplant. Um, and yes, a little bit about myself. What regards, how do I fall under the umbrella of weight loss? I too used to be over 300 pounds. I used to weigh 340 pounds. And now I devote my life to helping people through it, through different avenues, through different forms of healing, through different forms of self-exploration. So I'm excited to be talking about this kind of stuff. This is my life's purpose.
Awesome. Well, I saw on your website, and you just mentioned you were 340 pounds in 2010 at the age of 24. Can you kind
Mhm.
of talk about the road that led you to getting there in terms of lifestyle, eating, and whatnot?
Oh, definitely. I always kind of joke and say my first four-letter word was diet, because I weigh about 190 pounds today, and I haven't weighed this since I was in about third or fourth grade. So obesity and weight was always a struggle for myself as well as my family. How I got there, I came from an obese family. I came from a family that's like so many were busy. They worked full-time jobs on top of being full-time parents. They had many demons inside of them, many struggles that they'd never worked through, and what they went to for comfort, for relaxation, to de-stress was food. And it became an addiction for both of my parents in a lot of ways, among other things, that were substance abuse. And that was kind of my way. Then I adapted the habits of my parents. We say things like cholesterol or genetic, and we say that obesity is genetic, and that's absolutely false. What makes it genetic is you were simply adapting the habits of your parents, and that's very much what I did, physically as well as emotionally, just like my parents had adapted the emotional and physical habits of their family. So it was very much just a part of our life. We ate to be happy. We ate if we were bored. We ate when we weren't happy. It just became a part of my everyday, and something that was one of the only things I felt I had to look forward to as a child was the next meal.
I think you said on your website that you were on your first diet when you were in elementary school. Do
Mhm.
you remember that? Can you talk about?
I do vividly. I remember, yes, it was first grade, and I remember in kindergarten is when that's when I didn't go to preschool, so when you go to kindergarten, you're entering the world, and you're becoming an individual. And who am I, and how do I sit in this world? And I remember I used to wear like flowery clothes. I was a weird like hippie child, and I would also wear clothes that had food on it because I'm like, I love food. Why am I not going to wear it? I wear it on my body. I as well wear it over my body. And I remember people started identifying like, oh, you have fruit on your shirt. Fruit is good for you. And it was like, okay. So it started out putting me into this weird imbalance of like, so there's good foods and there's bad foods. Okay, I don't like good foods. I like bad foods. I want to be bad. And so my mom, just kind of feeling out of control, started putting us on diets. And so I remember being on the Atkins diet on and off for years. I remember the grapefruit diet. That was probably my least favorite because I hated grapefruit and I hated egg whites and I hated wheat toast. And as a child, there's something, food is such a sacred experience in our society, in our culture, and it's deeply ingrained in us. We what does that term say? Break bread. We're having beautiful conversations over breaking bread, and there's something about sharing a meal. So even as a child, I feel a lot of that was taken away from me because I was instantly told, "You eat this, not that." That's a bad food. If you eat that, you'll be fat. And if you're fat, then oh my God, then the world might as well end. And I'd never felt control. Control was something I didn't feel until the other side of all of this because as a child, I would want foods that I wasn't allowed to have, but these were sensations as a 6, 7, 8 year old you can't really understand. It's like, but why can't I have this? Why is this wrong? Why am I wrong? Why is my body wrong? And I cheated. I cheated on all the diets, all of the diets. And I remember in second grade, I went to a harvest festival and I had money. I'd saved my money for this harvest festival, not so I could play the games, so I could get the cheese popcorn and the can of soda and the ice cream sundae. And I remember I ran home, or I didn't run home. I probably walked briskly home. I was a chubby child. And I got caught eating it. And just how taboo that was to my mother, how I remember her saying, how dare you fail this, which was a complete projection of her own self onto me. And from that day forward, it's almost like food took on a naughty quality, almost like maybe when adults cheat on each other and there's the adultery, of like, well, oh, I got caught and I shouldn't have got caught, but hey, like at least I got what I want. So it created such an unhealthy relationship with food that I struggled with almost my entire life.
I saw on your website that, and this is kind of jumping forward, but to maybe whenever you were 24 or approaching there, but you said, kind of at your worst, at your lowest point, you were a bulimic, a closet binge eater, a drug addict, and in a severe health crisis. Can you kind of talk about what life was like at that point?
Yes, definitely. It was, I was thinking about it recently, just like somebody was asking me, like, oh, well, your life must be so great because they saw me and, I'm a slimmer woman than I used to be. And I thought the journey to get here, my gosh, has been paved in so much adversity. Yes, what I talk to people about is what you hear that term, like what's going on the inside, you wear on the outside. And my life was a reflection of who I was on the inside. I was bulimic. I was, yes, very much a closet binge eater. I used to cut myself. I was incredibly self-sabotaging. I was in a relationship because my dad wasn't around a whole lot. I then adapted this belief that I have to be loved by any man I can find. And then at that, heavy of a size, for me, I'd taken it to such extremes that, I wasn't worthy. I wasn't worthy of love. I wasn't worthy of attention. And so when I would get the attention from a man, it'd be like, I don't care how he treats me. He at least loves me. He at least accepts me for who I am. And so I was engaged to a man who was obsessed with obese women. And so there was a disconnect emotionally, even within that experience of I'm getting the one thing I want more than anything, perceivingly so, love, but in the most unsupportive way because he loves me for the one thing that is killing me. My cholesterol was over 300. My blood pressure was consistently 200 over 100. I didn't go through the testing to identify I had sleep apnea, but I had all the signs. I had an abnormal heartbeat. I had eczema growing all over my body. I felt like a ticking time bomb. I was so uncomfortable. I'd wake up and I'd have a hard time breathing and my kidneys would hurt because the night before I'd been binge eating and then I'd, vomit and then you'd be like, well, I didn't ever technically had dinner because I threw it up. So it was this vicious cycle. And I hated myself. I was resisting myself on a daily basis because I couldn't, A, believe how far I'd let it go, and B, it's like I was always running from something. I'd never really sat with what had happened to me as a childhood. I hadn't sat with what I was filling up on. I was starving on the inside more than just, from food, but my life was starving, and I was looking for anything to make me feel full. And it's interesting that when you get into that cycle, all of the things that you perceive will make you full are actually furthering your emptiness. I felt alone. We talk about, me and Naomi are creating a product right now, the 300 things I wish I knew when I was, or the 5 things, well, that'd be a huge list. The 5 things I wish I knew when I weighed 300 pounds. And it's been interesting thinking about that. Like, what did I need to know? And most of it was so simple. I never thought I could have gotten this far. I don't know if I would honestly be listening to this at 340 pounds. it was awful. It was awful. And I was told that if I didn't make a change, I wouldn't live to be 40. And I had another doctor who tried to guarantee me I wouldn't live to be 30 if I continued down this sabotaging path. I did all kinds of different substance abuse. I mean, anything I could get my hands on, I was ingesting.
So obviously, at some point you decided to make a change. Was that more of did you have a rock bottom moment? Was it a complete 180? Or was it more of a change that happened over time?
It was definitely a rock bottom moment. I had found out that I was 340 pounds, and I didn't know I was that heavy. Like I knew I was heavy, but I didn't know I was that heavy. I was having to buy 2 seats on an airplane, and of course, always having to use that darn extender, and you just didn't feel like you fit in the world. I think that was my biggest thing is I felt there was no place for me because I had to buy extra seats and everything. I just always felt like such an inconvenience. You're so aware spatially of yourself when you're that large and how much space you take up, and what an inconvenience that can be perceivingly to some. And I remember stepping on the scale and I couldn't believe my eyes. And I started looking around at my life. It kind of was a gradual initially, the cerebral part of getting there, of like looking at my parents. My dad had congestive heart failure. He had dementia, small veins disease, kidney failure. And this man was barely 60 years old. And these were all preventative, with the exception of, some argue that dementia is preventative, but with the exception of dementia, all of it could have been preventative through lifestyle. And then I looked at my mom, whom I was living with both of them, taking care of them at the time, and she's having surgery after surgery on her spine, on her shoulders, on her hips, knees. Her body was eating itself. Then you look at her diet, and it's a highly acidic diet, and again, preventable illnesses. And when I was on the doctors and they started asking me all these types of questions, and they were like, well, what was it that got you to change? And the best way I think I can put it is I felt like I was looking in a genetic mirror, that if I didn't do something now, then I'd be lucky to live as old as my parents, because they weren't as unhealthy as I was at that age. And then I started looking at, wow, I'm engaged to this man who, I mean, he's loving me at the best capacity he can, but he's got some serious demons also, got some serious baggage, I guess I should say. And there was something inside me that just kept saying, like, this is it. Like, this is it. This is my quality of life. Like, this is forever. Like, why can all these other people do it and I can't? And, but the rock bottom moment really was one day, to just be completely transparent, where Taco Bell was my thing. I loved me some Taco Bell. Give me $17 in about like 10 minutes at Taco Bell and I could do some serious damage. Yay, cheesy gordita crunch. And I remember I'd come home and I'd purged and I'd flushed the toilet, and I caught a reflection of myself in the toilet, and I couldn't even recognize who was staring back at me. And that was a bit startling. And then I stood up and I washed my face off, because you get really messy. And then I looked in the mirror and I wanted to end it, because I just didn't feel like any reason to keep going. And my mom was popping pills quite a bit at that time. And so I knew I had a way out. I was like, she's got Percocets and she's got Oxycontin, and it wouldn't take much. And I'd thought of that before, but it'd never been that serious. And it was interesting, and there's no real way. I mean, you call it my unconscious mind. Some people want to call it God. Some people want to call it source, whatever you want to call it. Call it an aha moment. But something inside me kept saying in that moment, like, well, what if this time could be different? Like, I know you've gone on diets, and I know you've tried exercise programs, and I know you were told to go see a gastro bypass doctor, but what if this time could be, what if you could do it? And I felt this like inner struggle going on, as crazy as it sounds. It felt crazy living it, of like, it can't be different, but what if this time could be different? And I decided to trust that voice after what felt like hours. It was probably only 15 minutes in the bathroom, of what if this time could be different. And I looked like, okay, well, what could I do if we're gonna be different, I was like, well, I could purge my kitchen, but I'd done that before, like get all the unhealthy stuff out and go to the store and spend $100 on healthy food and eat none of it. Done that. But I was like, I'll give it a whirl again. And I'm like, but I probably need to move this time. I need to move my body. And at the time, I couldn't walk my driveway because it was a super long driveway. And that became my life's ambition of like, all right, well, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm gonna see how far I can get down. And I got about halfway up. And I was like, okay, well, kind of feel like a douche and a failure. But that's okay. I will get back up tomorrow and I'll try again. And, it took about a month to get to the top. And it was such a new level of pride in myself and accomplishment that I was like, what if I could maybe one day walk the neighborhood? Like, that would be cool. And it was that drive of just a little bit more every single day. And in those moments of being alone with myself, I started going inward. I started looking at things different. Like, what do you really want out of your life, Eve? Like, why are you settling? So, yeah, it was a little bit of all of it. I guess it was an aha moment, but it was a lot of processing up to that time.
Thanks for sharing that. I saw in a blog post that you said your mental weight is much heavier than your physical weight. Can you talk about what you mean by that?
Absolutely. That is like that. Talk about my life's purpose. Yes. What we as a society are treating the effect. And what I mean by that is in the weight loss industry, we're treating the fat. Lose weight now, lose weight quick, take this pill for 5 weeks and you'll be thin. All those empty promises. What put on the weight? For some, I've talked to a lot of women, it's like, well, I had a baby and, but now I'm struggling to take it off. And, it's circumstances like that. If it's hormonal, I can start to, there's maybe a difference to that. But ultimately, what is it that got you to put on this weight? Because that's the cause. And, so much of why people are overweight, it's very different for everybody, why it happens. A lot of times it's a protection. It's a barrier. What I commonly see in this, I'm not going to generalize this to everybody, but what I see most commonly in women who are severely overweight, there's sexual abuse, or there's physical abuse. And so what starts to happen is you start resisting the self so much that you start to put on weight. And for somebody who is this large, I mean, that for me, that quality of life was miserable. It wasn't like I was comfortable. It wasn't like I was some great voluptuous woman living this thriving life. I was miserable. I was unhealthy. I was physically incapable of moving. And I teach something called weight release. I don't teach weight loss because I work with the unconscious mind. And when the unconscious mind hears lose or lost, it instinctively wants to find it. When you lose your keys, what do you think? Oh God, I gotta find him. I can't leave. Where's my phone? I lost my phone. You gotta find it. I lost my dog. Like I must find it. Why would weight be any different? It's not. So when we release something, when we let it go, it's a conscious decision. We release a balloon into the air. We release a fish back into the water. We let go of what is anchoring us down, on what is burdening us. And, when we change, our life changes. If you want something different, they say you have to be something different. So if you're existing in this unsupportive behavior of overeating and being sedentary, chances are there's some sort of emotional block there. Could be big, it could be massive, it could be something from your childhood, it could be something small, like a disempowering belief of, I'm not worthy of it, I'm not capable. I say small, as in like being unworthy is a small task to take on. But it doesn't have to be monstrous, like I was beaten or sexually abused. It could be I was made fun of a few times as a child, and now I carry that belief that I am not good enough. So we very much, we're human, we're creatures of emotions, and we're expected to be able to solve these problems with an easy formula. Yes, it is energy in versus energy out. It is a level of science. But there's also things like stress, which creates cortisol, which is the stress hormone in the brain, which then, or in the body, and then which then holds on to weight in your body. So if you are constantly in a stress-filled environment in your body, in your life, your body, being brilliant, is going to know to start storing to fat. So even if you are doing everything right, you're not going to be able to let go of the weight. So there's a lot of factors. I think it's more emotional than anybody is giving it credit to.
Another thing I love that you said on your website is that there's no finish line. There's absolutely no finish line. Is
Nope.
that something that took you a little while to learn?
Yeah, I had to cross. Ironically enough, I had to cross a bunch of finish lines in order to discover that. Because what starts to happen, I've noticed, and I don't know all things. Obviously, I'm only one woman. Um, with individuals who are overweight, the pendulum can swing both ways. And what I mean by that is you can be severely overweight and then go severely the opposite direction, which I did. Do do do. Extreme personality, party of one. Um, I was sedentary and obese, and then I was like, well, now I'm not going to watch movies at all. Like, I'm not going to sit and watch television. I'm not going to watch movies because then I'm going to be then I'm going to get fat again, and then I'm going to be lazy, and that's the worst thing in the world. And so I started, like, once I was able to move and my mobility went up a lot, I was like, well, maybe I could do a 5K. So then I started doing 5Ks, and then I started running 5Ks. And then I did a triathlon, and it was around then, maybe a little bit before, a little bit after, when I started realizing, wait a minute, like, there's no destination. Like, you can hit your goal weight, but it's not like you suddenly go on like this cool autopilot and you don't have to worry about, putting on weight, and you got the hot spouse, and you suddenly are making all this money, and just life looks like a commercial. It doesn't work that way. This is a journey, and that's why I teach people that it has to be fun and it has to work for you the entire time, and you have to change it up as you go. Like, not what works for you at the beginning is not going to work for you 2 years in. I'm now, even now, like, I'm adapting different habits, because it's like, okay, well, I can tell my metabolism is shifting, and I can tell that my muscles are used to the workouts that I'm doing, so I'm going to do something different, something fun. It isn't about the number. I thought it was. I so thought it was. I'm down 150 pounds, and I'm not a plus size woman anymore, but I'm still very voluptuous. So there was that struggle as a woman of like, okay, I have all this extra skin. Why don't I look like I was about to age myself and say like Christy Brinkley, but or like Cindy Crawford. But why don't I look like Beyonce? There we go. There's relatable. Why don't I have the body like a Kim Kardashian? Like, I worked hard for this, and that's that's not what this journey exactly looks like for everybody. That what I like to think for myself as well as with others is, even at the finish line, like, who do you get to be? What is this all for? So great, you're 100 pounds down. What are you believing that your life is going to be like with 100 less pounds? Because I weighed 340 pounds mentally even after losing 150, and that's because I lost the weight. I didn't release it.
That's a lot of great stuff in there. So, what does your typical client look like now, and also what are they looking to you to help with?
They're generally in a place of they're fed up with their quality of life. They've taken many different routes. I've tried the diets, I've tried the exercise. I maybe even commonly, a lot of people have gone through therapy that come work with me because they're like, either it benefited, but I'm kind of hitting a roadblock. They're ready. They may not know how to do it, but they're very much ready, and they want an alternative form of healing the past and letting go of the weight. I have so much different background. I was an actress, interestingly enough. Even through all of that, I still acted because I got to hide and play in sight. I got to wear a mask. Even though I was obese on stage, I was getting attention. So what's been fun is I've been having a lot more creative projects with my work. So we do a lot more. We do painting, we do journaling. I've started like a mask removal class that's taking on a lot of attention, because in a lot of ways, for individuals, not all, but who have weight, it is kind of like a mask. It's masking who is this authentic version of myself underneath this all. I'm going to be trying this class out here shortly about theatrical healing, so healing through improvisation. through poetry, through slam poetry. So taking a hold of what maybe has happened to you, or what, where your life is at, and let's take ownership of it, and let's make it into something. Let's make it into a piece of art. Let's make it beautiful, rather than shaming ourselves so much. Let's meet ourselves where we are and decide where we want to go from here. So yeah, I do that through one-on-ones. I do that through workshops. I do a lot of women's empowerment type workshops, so I tend to attract mainly women, although I've been excited. I've been attracting more male clients to work on, both their masculine and feminine energy. Just people who are ready, who want a different way of doing this. I worked for Tony Robbins for 2 years, and so I very much have the training behind me of the very masculine, action-oriented approach, which is very, very, I think, beneficial. I had started working for him after I'd lost the weight. Hadn't released it yet, though. And so I like to integrate that approach of, being very action-oriented, being very intentional with your goals, but also bringing in kind of a very gentle, experimental, curious, creative approach. I think healing your inner child is a huge part of the journey.
So, if you were to give some advice, and obviously I'm sure you do, to someone who is where you first started when you were on the journey, and maybe some encouragement to help them realize that the control is in their own hands, that it's not their destiny, that there is hope, what would you give to that person?
What an excellent question. At the start of their journey, the first thing, if I'm addressed, first thing that came to mind, and then I'll go from there, that it's going to be okay, that you're not the exception. And one of my favorite quotes of all time, super simple, it says, I didn't say it was going to be easy, but I did say it was going to be worth it. That you have a force within you. So we talk about, like, there's a really, big craze with metaphysics. I shouldn't say craze. It's brilliant work. I don't want to dumb it down. I'm into it. And like being spiritual and engaging in your spiritual nature. And when we look at what the term spirit implies, that is the force within you that gives you life, energy, and power. So if you want to add a religious spin to that, you can, but from Merriam Dictionary, from the lamest way of looking at it, there is a force within us that gives us light, that gives us energy, that gives us power. That is the same energy that gets your heart to beat, your eyes to blink, and your body to digest. There is a power within you that will heal broken bones. If that is the case, then you losing fat off your body is not any different. That it can be healed just as simply. You just have to want it.
And then I guess in a similar way, if you could go back and give yourself some advice, your 24-year-old self at the beginning of all this, what would that be?
Oh, she needs a hug for starters. She needs a really big hug. Um, you're worth it. I think that would be it. You're worth it. You're worth the effort. You're worth the attention. You're worth the energy.
Awesome. And then lastly, where can people find out more about you, connect with you?
Um, yeah, inspirationaleve.com. You can find me on any social media. So Facebook, Inspirational Eve. That is INSPIRATIONALEVE. Inspirational Eve. I'm also on Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter as well, always posting daily fun, inspirational things, quirky things, silly things, just things to get you up and moving and more excited about life. We need that more than anything. Let's have some fun, shall we?
Sounds great to me. Eve, thanks so much for the time. Thanks for the inspiration. Thanks for the chat and sharing your heart and sharing your story. And we'll look forward to chatting with you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason.
All right. Have a great day.
You too, hun.